What's up, everybody? I am back with another reaction video. This one is a new channel I came across, Endymiontv, and this video is called "They're Normalizing This in Modern Gaming." Plus, Sweet Baby is back. So, this is a little while ago, but I want to check this out and react to it, gauge what he has to say, and always looking for any kind of gaming news here and there just to see what's out there. But leave a comment below, let me know what you guys think, and check out his channel too. Like to make sure I give props where it's due, and follow me on my YouTube and Twitch channel as I stream games myself, review content, as well as react to videos. So let's hop right into it.
If there's one word I think I never want to see ever return in any capacity in our society, it's the word woke. Not because the word has lost all meaning, but unfortunately, that it's become a rallying cry for brainwashed individuals to keep pushing their usual nonsensical beliefs onto all of us. Yeah, this video is going to be hitting a lot of things, games, even movies like Snow White, for example. Just let me explain, alright? It's all gonna make sense by the end of it, I promise you. Anyways, the point is that woke media, in general, I guess, is trying to make a comeback. And depending on who you ask, it's either not an issue at all, or it's like the biggest red flag that people are just ignoring. Recently, we had Reloaded come out. If you forgot about this game, I don't blame you, since
Yeah, the Reload has been raked through the coals. Like, I think it's like 50 people was like playing at the launch. It's terrible stuff, and the whole narrative is kind of crazy. I mean, they try to do like a whole Laura Croft thing, but for Africa, African artifacts or something like that. It's just like you can call it Relooted with a bunch of black people stealing. You know, look, I get. I mean, like from what I understand, like I get the point of it, but the execution is kind of crazy. But from what I'm hearing, those who've been playing, they're saying the gameplay is okay. And these are people like I follow that are very fair. This isn't just all one-sided, hate everything, or just I just love everything. No, they give fair critiques, and it's like, they can in their honest opinion, the gameplay is okay, but it's just like everything else seems to be kind of a little off, especially behind the scenes where they purposely. Cause let's be honest, this is a very DEI, like leaning kind of like company. I imagine. Like I'm all for making your own thing, especially if you want more stuff for like black centered games. That's all well and good, but you gotta avoid DEI crap. You gotta avoid woke crap. Yeah, especially coming from people from behind the scenes. It just it boosts certain red flags that because of pattern recognition, we all know the negative connotations behind certain things like inclusiveness, okay, need to be seen, representation, things like that. uh, it causes people to eye roll, and more often than not they tend to be proven right given certain narratives that's being pushed in, whether it comes to video games, comics, movies, or TV shows. So no wonder it's not doing so hot right now. They could have just make a straight up pretty good game. You don't need to like tell like, oh, we got a bunch of women and everything. Like, who cares? It's like, are they good characters? Let's talk about like your game. Talk about like the story behind it. How good is the story? What you're trying to tell? How good are these characters? What are they about? Are they reasonable looking people and not uggos, just so you don't offend certain people who don't look attractive in their daily lives? That sort of thing.
a lot of people seem to as well, as the BBC reported here. Reloaded is a game about stealing treasures back.
Look at these characters. Like, what is this? And this is like an old lady, and like the character models really don't look all that impressive like I'm not sure what the budget was, but I'm pretty sure it was decent enough to like cover making sure your character models look good. Like, don't you want your black characters to look good?
From white-owned museums with a team of black thieves. I wish I was kidding, but that's a real game that exists
like
in the year of
unfinished models.
2026. The cast in Reloaded, they look like background extras in Black Panther, and I laugh at how much of a stranglehold that Black Panther as an aesthetic has actually had on black characters getting made even to this day.
Yeah. The whole Killmonger look. Look, I like the first Black Panther movie, mind you. The first one. The second one was kind of bad. But the Killmonger look, it's like they saw that and thought, okay, this is the only look that black people ever have, or black men specifically. It's like, y'all don't pay attention to each other. That's like you don't like, yeah, you want to. It's like, how do you want to? It's like a quick fix of trying to make your black male character cool and hip. It's like putting like a cigarette in somebody's mouth to trying to indicate how cool they are without putting in the work to show how cool they are through their actions. This is the equivalent of that, in my opinion. It's like that locks lopsided over is like the cigarette of the day. It's like to show like, oh, you'll love our stuff because we got cool characters. Look how cool they look.
I mean, just go look at the Killmonger haircut meme, where every black character, or black passing, I guess, they all suddenly had the same haircut as Michael B. Jordan's villain in Black Panther. I remember audibly groaning when I first played Spider-Man 2 and saw that even Miles Morales, of all people, had that Killmonger haircut too. It was so obvious that the pandering was now in full swing, pun intended, because it was a Spider-Man game, but yeah, it was true. It's coded artistic language in a nutshell, like that exists to ensure that people can visually identify something from a glance and understanding that, oh, that game or movie or show is trying to pander to a specific group of people. And by the way, I don't think that black people are really to blame for most of this. In actuality, I think the real perpetrators are very likely to be white, liberal, woke women and men who virtue signal the most without really realizing that they end up being the most racist of pretty much everyone usually. The point of the matter is how delusional and frankly pathetic a lot of this nonsense ends up feeling. It feels fabricated, not real whatsoever, and at best, performative. Do you guys remember when fans spotted that Insomniac Games and Sweet Baby Inc. screwed up in Spider-Man 2 with their own pandering when it came to Miles Morales' lineage? Remember when it's seen here that Insomniac actually put the Cuban flag as a massive painting in Miles' family home, when the poor guy was actually Puerto Rican, which is a totally different flag, and then fans spotted that immediately, and Insomniac then had egg on their face and had to go in and patch that asset to display the proper flag instead. You'd think with all the consultants these people pay top dollar for, they would be able to catch these sort of things, but they didn't. It's crazy though, because I'm going to read you the plot synopsis for Reloaded, and you're gonna think that I'm lying to you. But that I'm someone making a joke or something, but I promise you, this is the real plot of a video game that has been released in 2026. Let me read you this. This is from the BBC again. Look at this, guys. Imagine it is 2099 and the Transatlantic Returns Treaty is falling apart as Western museums find ways to wriggle out of promises to return stolen African treasures. Fed up with the trickery, artifacts expert Professor Grace decides to take matters into her own hands, and the South African knows the perfect people to help. Her grandchildren, Nomali and Trevor, and her former student Etienne in an abandoned warehouse in Johannesburg, Professor Gray sets out her high-stakes plan to break into museums and private collections and take back artifacts mostly plundered during colonial times. So you're telling me that this game takes place 70 years from right now, where technology is likely so advanced that the security systems and whatnot are so powerful that no human could reasonably ever break into them, and instead of using your voice and diplomacy to rally your cause to retrieve retrieving these artifacts, which you should do, by the way, because that's legal, a black professor instead in South Africa decides that her best option as an educated person is to turn to a life of crime and get her own family involved with this operation. This insinuates that robbing, breaking, and entering, and generally just being a crime,
because they're white liberals. They thinking like, oh, you know, we have to like speak up for like the poor and disenfranchised, those who can't speak for themselves. They got this hero complex kind of thing going on. Like they are changing the world, but they speak up like a voice with a voiceless. It's very cringy, and like yeah, there's I understand that like I in my humblest opinion, and if I'm being extremely charitable, I think they were trying to. If this was kind of pitched in a particular way, I think they was trying to do like a Tomb Raider thing, but with like black characters, or like an Uncharted thing, but with black characters. And that's not a bad premise. But if you start talking about like liberating, African artifacts and stuff like that, you could have just had it, just a couple of characters that happen to be black that is, you know, treasure hunters or treasure seekers or whatever. Like, no different from like Indiana Jones, without the woke mess of, oh my god, he's grave robbing. No, you're trying to take the fun out of it by like putting like real world realism and this stuff. Like, we know realistically that half the stuff that Indiana Jones would do would be considered, probably illegal, or like didn't go through the proper channels at the very least. But this is supposed to be a fantasy. It's escapism. You just have some couple of black characters that have to be like the Nathan Drakes of their world, and go and just not just black artifacts, but you can start off with that, but also go to other sites and ruins, and get artifacts to take back to their home countries, or at least it belongs in a museum, the museum of their country of origin, and and bring it back to the people, and be the characters be snarky and fun like Indiana Jones or Laura Croft or Nathan Drake. That could have just been that, but no, you gotta put in all this extra stuff, real world kind of drama into this supposed fantasy, and with unpolished work, mind you. From what I'm seeing, they didn't think this through. As a matter of fact, they probably too busy trying to be culturally sensitive or do the right tick boxes, more so concerning themselves with things like story. And again, their ducks in a row with that.
is something not frowned upon in this Dr. Grace's life then, but instead it's encouraged and taught to her own family as something that they should push for. Like, you can't be serious. Because again, they just said this professor's grandchildren, for God's sakes, are master thieves as well. Like, how did you look at a concept featuring an all-black cast and then came to the conclusion that, you know what we need? We need to make these characters, who are our heroes apparently, by the way, cheating thieves who break into government property to steal things. Whether they claim they have a right to those artifacts is one thing, which I would argue you don't, because it's not like you own that artifact yourself personally. This would be like anyone who now lives in Egypt just suddenly claiming that, oh yeah, I can just go live inside the pyramid, set up my PS5 and start watching Smiling Friends or something in it because I'm Egyptian. Sure, that's how that works. This weird entitlement that a game like Reloaded has is never not going to be funny to me, because it's so obviously a push by the developers to try to will that woke era back, if you will, when it's clearly not working. Reloaded on Steam, as you can see here, had a peak player count of 57 people. It's now down to 25 as I'm writing this video.
Yeah,
But either
50.
way,
Yeah,
that's an
I
abysmal
heard that
number
right.
for a game from a new studio. If this were any other game studio releasing a game that likely to costed at least a few $1,000,000 to make, they would be freaking out at these player numbers. Reloaded retails for $20 Canadian, assuming that everyone who played it at its peak of 57 players actually bought the game, which I honestly doubt, and the majority of the people playing are likely just game reviewers, let's be real, that got it for free. But for the sake of argument, if all 57 people actually bought Reloaded, it
God,
means
do
that the
not like that
game made about
character model. Ugh,
$1,150-ish or so far, which is, well, I mean, I don't
like
need to tell you how
melting
bad that
wax.
is. Then there's hyperallergic.com is seen here. They did an interview with the makers of Reloaded, and what I found interesting is that at one point, as seen here, Nyamacop, that's the development studio of Reloaded, brings up how they had to secure funding. From what I could tell, South Africa has some form of funding for video game development, but a lot of it is still outsourced, and I saw a few forum posts where people were asking the same questions as to who is actually funding a game like this, and my belief is likely that this game was probably funded by outside sources. Likely westernized ones, by the way, that enabled Nyamacop to now make Reloaded in the first place. Now, I can't prove this, of course, I know that, but I wouldn't be surprised if US aid was the funding majority for something like this. Since the big leak about US aid, that was last year, by the way, that told everyone how the previous presidential government with Joe Biden was funding plenty of nonsense throughout the funneling of American taxpayer money to all sorts of nonsense all around the world. It wasn't even just tied to this, it was so many things, dude. The current American government even issued papers like this one, for example, quite literally called, and here it is on screen, Cuts to Woke Programs. Their words, not mine, but as
Cuts to work programs. President Trump is committed to eliminating radical gender and racial ideologies that poison the minds of Americans. The president's FY 2026 budget upholds the Constitution by eliminating funding for cultural Marxism. Woke program cuts highlights preschool development grants. And this is the biggest one in my opinion. Like you need to keep kids need to be kids. You need to keep like certain things that only adults should be privy to away from kids. I didn't like when I was like a young child. Bill Clinton was the president at that time. I was not anywhere near aware about what was going on with the political realm because that wasn't forced down my cartoons or whatever social injustice, like I don't know, like Nelson Mandela or whatever that was going on, or apartheid. None of that stuff was subtly or overtly funneled in my Batman the Animated Series. Didn't have any of that crap. Okay, I was allowed to grow up with like just enjoying DuckTales and playing my video games, playing like my SNES with like Ninja Turtles on my SNES or whatever. And it's like none of that stuff. We wasn't privy to that kind of stuff. But this day and age, or at least the past handful of years, all that crap has been injected into to our young kids, and like with all the like gender identities and having people dress in drag, reading to children, all that crap. That should have been like, I don't care what you identify as. I don't care like any kind of racial issues you might have. All that is dead once you're talking about children. Children overrides anything else. Anything else. Even like any black issues completely is overrode or overridden by the fact that if it comes to the children, they are the priority because they are the future. They don't need to know all that stuff because they need to have like a childhood. But you putting all this crap in because that's what they try to get you. Because a lot of the like liberal woke white people, typically the females, think they can be slick by putting stuff in the blueies, cartoons and stuff like that, just to indoctrinate them. Let's call it what it is. It is indoctrination because you're trying to get them young because you are afraid about what kind of parents they might have, because you assume they have some kind of bigoted parents. But whether or not they're bigoted or not, you're not their parents, they're their parents. It's up to the parents of the child to determine what they need to be introduced to, or what kind of things that they feel is right to discuss if they see it out in the world and not in the classrooms. Yeah, leave it up to the parents, but no, they don't want to do that because they want to make sure that the future generations can be thinking like them, so it could be like a perpetual cycle of this nonsense. And they got called out on it, and Trump put a nip that crap in the bud. Now that is just perpetuating the hate boner they have of him, because he doesn't buy into that kind of crap, and most of the country don't buy into that Hollywood cultural liberal bubble crap. We ain't buying into that, and we calling out on it, and that's what gets them angry.
As you can see, just a small sample of the things that have been cut from U.S. aid support. Stuff like critical race theory, social justice.
Oh yeah, it was in the middle of reading this. Preschool development grants. The budget eliminates this $315 million grant program that was a tool of the last administration to put diversity, equity, and DEI, or just die, policies into early care and education, such as giving money to the Minnesota Department of Education to implement intersectionality and radical equity for 4-year-olds. Why in God's green earth do you need to? Through this program, federal funding was provided to create a guidebook on lessons for creating quality care for Oregon's LGBT plus families in collaboration with the organization called Pride Northwest. This stuff, they don't need to be brought to the face of 4-year-olds. Teacher quality partnerships and equity assistance centers. The budget eliminates $77 million used to indoctrinate new teachers. Training materials in these partnerships included topics such as critical race theory, DEI, social justice activism, anti-racism, and instruction on white privilege and white supremacy. What happened to like just math and science, art? But no, they gotta make sure like white people are bad. Make sure you teach them that. Pathways to removing obstacles to housing. These Department of Housing and Urban Development housing grants used taxpayer dollars to fund local governments that pursue radical racial, gender, and climate goals. For example, HUD provided $6.7 million to Los Angeles County to conduct a equity audit and reverse land use patterns that have roots in systematically racist policies. $4 million to New York City to improve its environmental review materials. $5 million to the city of Seattle to redress past harms through a legacy homeowner program that targeted Black, Indigenous, people of color, residents at risk of development, and $2.1 million to Milwaukee to rectify racial disparities in home ownership. Now, I'm not going to deny there were past wrongs done with marginalized people, but you learn from it and you move on. You don't let that be constantly perpetuated, like constantly re-victimizing yourselves. You learn from it and you move on and not try to repeat the past, but don't ignore it or keep rehashing it like and making white people feel like horrible people, so they gotta constantly flog themselves in front of people of color to just have them like like some martyrs or something. It's just like like me growing up, I learned about like our Black history or just history in general, and certain atrocity that's done like back in like during like WW2 and 1, of course, like the Civil War. I learned about like even like Roman like injustices that happen, and like like white people was enslaved during Roman times and being forced into gladiatorial arenas. But We learn all that stuff, of course, but we don't need to make it our entire lives. Uh, but they don't want to talk about like other injustices around the world because it's all about stuff that's got just a particular hue of skin. That's all that matters. Look, basically, I just don't care for this victimizing and this norm you're pushing out or try to push out, like white people are bad, teaching young white kids about like the atrocities of people that look like them way back when, and get that crap in their head. Don't do that. That's horrific. Okay, and just kids in general don't need to know that. Life will eventually teach them that kind of stuff, or when they get into the later parts of their high school, they will learn that eventually, without and like a natural course of this stuff, not just forcing it down people's throat. And they don't need no racial equity kind of crap. All this stuff is just, racism with extra steps. It's reverse racism with extra steps. It's just a bunch of nonsense. This word salad, critical race theory, social justice activism. It needs to be, all this stuff needs to be getting rid of. This is dumb. This is really, really dumb.
Justice activism disguised to dismantle what they call white supremacy, ironically funded by white taxpayer people, largely by the way, through USAID's push for diverse content creation. One of these USAID groups was the Minority Business Development Agency, or MBDA for short, which according to the American government, as I highlighted here for you to see. In addition, the Minority Business Development Agency mismanaged funds in recent years, wasting taxpayer dollars. Most importantly, last year, a US district court found MBDA's social disadvantage based on race or ethnicity in its funding decisions to be unconstitutional. In spite of this, the MBDA announced that it considered the ruling unconstitutional and that it would continue to fight for its ability to practice racial discrimination. Discriminatory DEI practices are the core mission of MBDA, and the agency is fully eliminated. So why I bring this up is because groups like this were actually notorious for taking the taxpayer money of hardworking Americans and either outsourcing the funds to other countries to create content meant to push their sort of agenda all around the world. Again, they admitted to practicing racial discrimination, like that's in there, which is why now the MBDA is fully dismantled for a reason. Because generally speaking, when it comes to these sorts of practices, which has infected games by the way, and we'll be seeing the effects for a long time still, they would continue their lunacy ever more if it meant that they could just keep funneling more money while quite literally not making any profit themselves. This is my belief that a game like Reloaded is likely funded in some part by USAID or a joint program attached to it to some capacity. It's kind of just like Dustborn before it, these sorts of games that launched at basically 0 players, and yet these development teams never suffered layoffs or closures. And how does that work exactly? Because we know that if a game doesn't do well, studios downsize or even close down because profit has to be made to obviously keep the lights on. Insomniac Games, the makers of Spider-Man 1, 2, and Miles Morales, haven't had any real layoffs for years at their studio because Insomniac made games that sold very, very well, like all of the time. But when Spider-Man 2 came out, which somehow costed $300 million and then some to make, which was more money than Sony spent to buy Insomniac as a studio, by the way, after that game released, to let's say fan disdain at its story, pushing of DEI policies, and complete ruining of Peter Parker as Spider-Man, just to name a few things, Insomniac had layoffs for the first time in forever, as Forbes reported here in 2024. Insomniac was actually pissed that they had layoffs, because again, that wasn't really supposed to happen to them ever. Yet with Reloaded or Dustborn, sure, they're far smaller, but their profits need to be more than $1,000 in Reloaded's case to keep the lights on, obviously. Yet I guarantee you that Reloaded's dev studio Nyamacomp will still be totally fine despite all of this, which tells you that, like Dustborn, the sales of these games were never really the point. It was never about making a profit, because they know these games don't make profits. They just exist to push narratives and act effectively as propaganda. And like always, these people, they don't buy the things they champion anyways. Like, look at the release of Reloaded's first trailer by Epic Games' main account, no less, in 2025. Look at this. 21,000 likes on Twitter, millions of views and impressions, yet the Steam charts couldn't even cross 100 concurrent players. Like, that math is just not mathing. What astounds me is how every time a game is made for that group of people, the identity-driven types I mean, that champion these sorts of games, that yes, we love Reloaded, we love Dustborn, and Kill the Justice League, and Tell Me Why, and Lost Records. And yet always when it comes to supporting these sorts of games, they never show up, do they? Not even 1,000 of these sorts of people could be bothered to spend just $20 to buy Reloaded on Steam or wherever else. No, they can't even do that to support their agenda. This whole idea that these people make content for these, let's just say it how it is, left-leaning ideologue types all the time, and they never show up, is honestly astounding to me. They expect you and me.
This proves why it's so important to prioritize story over identity politics or agendas, because that's what most of our media has been doing. Most of it, not all. And I think we've been getting like a good shift in all that stuff in the past year or so. But it's uh, it's you're bankrupting yourself if you're so hyper focused on diversity and pushing a particular agenda, where the story part or the narrative gets pushed so far back where now you barely have time to fit one in, where of course the consumer will vote with their wallets and say, I don't want this crap anymore.
To be the ones who will like do the heavy lifting for them and buy Reloaded or Dustborn, but I keep getting told that these games aren't for me, so why would I buy it in the first place? I'm too busy playing Souls-likes and JRPGs to want to spend my time playing a game where I steal artifacts from government.
You would think something like Lara Croft wouldn't be for guys, but shocker, it, the franchise has been well known to draw in guys as well as girls because they prioritize story. And no developer of like Tomb Raider was like, oh well, it wasn't meant for guys, it was meant for girls. Like, why would you purposely ostracize potential buyers because some of them don't look at it and say, and see it as their cup of tea? It's weird to me. You fix your mouth to say something like, well, it's not meant for you. Nah.
Museums. Apparently, you can even steal artifacts from countries that are outside of South Africa, like neighboring regions, which makes even less sense to me because why would this group ever do that? Africa is full of different groups of people, obviously. This will make people mad, but a lot of African groups don't even like the other African groups around them. So if some South African thief were to break in and steal, let's say, an artifact from Rwanda, right? Because South Africa and Rwanda, by the way, they hate each other. There's a whole lot of history that goes alongside that. The Rwandans wouldn't be grateful if this Reloaded team would like steal a Rwandan artifact. They would likely instead sell out the South African thieves to the governments of that world they stole from because they don't like them at all due to all the bad blood between them. Like I said, steal more than just South African artifacts in this game. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's just like the whole thing feels, honestly, how do I put this? Reloaded's entire premise, it sounds like a white liberal woman's wet dream. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, some white liberal woman probably signed the checks from USAID that funded this game in the first place, and she was crying the whole time as her partner, because, by the way, these people don't call their husbands or wives anything but partner because it's gender neutral, and their partner will then hug them and say, wow.
And that's why I avoid using that partner word, because I also think it's because they don't want to attach, like, because husband and wife have that label has responsibilities behind it. Words mean something. There's definitions behind it for a reason. Being a husband and wife requires certain responsibilities attached to that label. Partner is like, you're not a law firm, you're not cops, you're a husband and a wife. It kind of drives me crazy when you like use that whole partner word.
Oh, you're such a trailblazer, embezzling all this American taxpayer money to make this propaganda. Wow, I'm so proud of you. Weirdos, dude. Just total weirdos. It's incredible that Reloaded also has racist caricatures of Asian people in it too. It's Philip Chen, who's unfortunately playing Reloaded shows here, so please watch this clip.
I heard you were back in town.
Please.
Reloaded shows here, so please watch this clip.
What?
I heard you were back in town.
No way. No freaking way. You gotta. No way.
But I don't believe it because I knew you would have come to see me.
That's the thing, I'm sorry. I was
It's
going
a
to...
parody. It's like a parody. Like, they wasn't completely serious, but they was dead on serious. They ain't thought this. They actually thought this was actually good. This kind of makes it even more funny. The fact that they actually probably pat themselves in the back when that person read that line. It's like, oh my god, this is gonna hit. Oh my god.
Visit you eventually.
You'll be gone long time. It's good to see you.
It's like a parody sketch.
Like, they couldn't have made it more pandering if they tried, but like I keep saying, people don't show up for these sorts of things other than to really make fun of it. They just don't make money. But let's pivot for a second to Snow White, because remember that movie? Well, that bombed, as we all know, but how much did it actually lose Disney in the long run? As Forbes reported here, Snow White actually lost $170 million for Disney, and that's kind of insane, but not really surprising. And that movie, like Reloaded, pandered way too close to the sun too, making people believe that Snow White, which was a traditional story about the power of love, was instead actually about being a boss girl, and that you don't need no man to save you because you're amazing on your own. Didn't also help that Rachel Zegler pushed the idea that the older Snow White movie was about a stalker prince chasing a woman, and that this new version was about activism over what it used to be. Everything made with this modernization lens placed on it, it just ruins everything that it touches. It's kind of like I said, right? Like, these people claim not to be racist or anything, yet they continuously make actual caricatures of the very properties that they're working within anyways. Snow White losing millions of dollars is really only a surprise to, I guess, activists, but they'll still claim that Snow White found its intended audience, despite losing boatloads of money. The same way that Reloaded is a success, apparently, despite making like negative money apparently too. And like I said so many times in other videos too, the coded language and designs of things can easily tell you if certain kinds of consultants also worked on a game or not. For a long time, people also assumed that Reloaded was Sweet Baby coded. I mean, look at it, come on now. But we couldn't prove it because Sweet Baby's name was being scrubbed from credits on purpose to hide their inclusion in these games. But like always, the truth ends up coming out because Chris Kindred, who used to work at Sweet Baby by the way, confirmed their involvement with Reloaded as seen here, where they said, did some super early design consulting on Reloaded.
And that's why, like, it was not until after, like, I bought and played Spider-Man 2 when I realized Sweet Baby was involved. But since then, I end up having to teach myself. And I think, I advise a lot of you out there, if you haven't already, to be, especially if you have kids, be hyper aware and do some research on and follow certain channels. Like Vera Dark, for example, is like a good example of a person you should follow. You give her a nice little shout out there because she is like a legit person who does some serious research behind what kind of games are out there and what you should look out for, especially if you try to buy games for your kid. The last thing you want is buying a game for your kid that got all these little weird coded language and all this little agenda driven crap swerved in the mix of it, because you don't need that for your young kid, and you definitely don't need it for yourself. You want something like the Beast of Reincarnation. That game, I cannot wait for that to come out because it has a female lead, but isn't like so focused on the fact that we got like a female led video game, blah blah blah. No, it's just like a decent game, and it's usually games coming from Eastern country blocks that putting out good quality games that more often than not you can trust. But yeah, and because of the Western games, you gotta do like some deep dive research just in case, because they try to hide the whole DEI or Sweet Baby Inc. stuff because they know, okay, we got busted because we overplayed our hand. So let's reconfigure our offices, rename it, but we still keep the same stuff. But like, no, you got to do your research, people, especially for the Western games, because we can't trust it offhand anymore. Because people just want to escapism when they play a video game,
It's so glad to see it finding its players. Big congrats to the team. There it is. Of course, Sweet Baby was involved with this. That explains the disastrous player numbers and horrible Asian caricatures in the game as well, and this is what I mean. It's like everything that gets touched by activists ends up turning into slop. Like, how did Disney ruin Snow White the way that they did? If not for any other reason that they were being gaslighted by freaks into believing that this way of doing media was actually the future when it clearly wasn't. The thing about games like Reloaded is that they prove that they can only reasonably exist if every institution in the world that is in favor of such content existing in the first place, by the way, bends the laws of our world to will these things into existence. It's as if when a game is genuinely great on its own, right? It needs next to no marketing or promotion because the experience, the game itself, it speaks to the players by
like Expedition 33. It's they let the fans decide because they put in the work to make sure that the story is top notch and the gameplay is top notch, as well as the characters are layered and attractive, and just like a well-rounded, and they raked in buckets upon buckets upon buckets of money by the truckloads. You know, this reloaded, rebooted, whatever, barely scratching $1,000 marker. I'm being hyperbolic, but it's not, getting that same level of praise. Because like he said, they bent over backwards trying to get everybody to push this so far. It's like, hey, it's going to be good. You got to like come check it out. It's like, it's just like, come on. It is like the stark contrast to Expedition 33. Because Sandfall prioritized story. This company who made this particular game did not prioritize story. Hell, they didn't prioritize character models, let alone the freaking story.
It's simply existing. Like, go look at Clair Obscur, right? Sure, it had a marketing budget to a degree, but its greatest promotion was that it was a great game. And then by word of mouth, it traveled organically as more people bought and then played it as well. This is the same for Demon's Souls back in the day, Dark Souls as well, Elden Ring, Black Myth Wukong, hell, even that new game that everyone's playing called Nugenics, that's a great example of this happening too organically. If a game is great, it will find an audience. That's the point. It will live and die by its own quality. Reloaded, like many Sweet Baby projects, can only live if everything is fabricated and forced to accommodate it for existing it in the first place. It is clearly not a game that could reach a sizable audience in any meaningful way because of it just being available. Having those numbers it has despite the massive push with botted likes and more, like it just could not find a real audience on its own, and it proves that. That, like Snow White, like anything else really that appeals to this social justice way of doing things, fails and falls before they even get moving because there's no actual audience for these sorts of things. These ideas and concepts, they are being forced down people's throats and it's clearly not working. Again, Insomniac had layoffs for making a Spider-Man game. Spider-Man, dude, the biggest hero in the world, like that shouldn't happen. But it shows just how toxic and nuclear levels of bad this sort of stuff is when it comes to making enjoyable content, that not even Spider-Man of all things can beat the radioactive waste, dude, that is these progressive talking points and beliefs. I'm sure, like always, the game's media will run defense for Reloaded, call it an important game that must exist and all these things, but deep down they know that this game is about as natural as plastic surgery is on like an OnlyFans model or something. It's all just fabricated to design, right? It's pushed by groups to spread propaganda, and the fact that something like this exists in 2026 as it does, that proves that these aren't just trends, honestly. They're proving how politics and cultural posturing are still trying to shape the industry's narrative despite all the pushback that they're getting. Reloaded will be championed by the usual types as a culturally significant narrative that amplifies representation and diverse voices. We've heard it before. But the normal people of the world instead will see it as a politically charged piece of propaganda that's masquerading as a video game. And look, diversity and authenticity in games can be good in theory, but when a game's like assign morality to deeds like breaking into museums and that sort of stuff is like your core mechanic of your game, you start to question whether you're playing a game or like a political thesis instead. And then here's the real question, right? When politics dictate,
there's plenty of diverse, kind of video games in the past that is diverse through organic means and not through some kind of mandate. Like Sweet Baby Inc. is like an office built on mandated, like, gotta have this amount of people of color, this amount of females, this amount of like paraplegics, this amount of like this and that and the third, and it just comes like just manipulating this project to make it seem like it's gonna be like the biggest thing ever when it's not, because it's so you're trying to force it to be good instead of just relying on its own merit, hoping that like the writers did their job. It's manufactured, the word I was looking for. Yeah, it's so manufactured. It's manufactured slop, and people not buying it anymore.
Its design and business strategy, you then have to truly ask yourselves, are we still playing games or are we just performing activism via interactive media instead? In my opinion, the mere existence of games like this that are so obviously not being made organically, but again as chess pieces on a board of politics, makes me believe that the gaming medium, among movies and more, they are just being used to change narratives, and more importantly, and this is key, minds as well. A game like Reloaded only exists to demoralize you, make you believe that you are somehow evil or wrong by simply existing, and that if you have any attachment to the institution institutions that house these horrible things. Like, how could they have these artifacts? Oh, the horror. Like, it's so dumb. It's made to make you think that you're the problem when you really aren't. I'm sick of these sort of gaslighting in games, and the fact that websites are running defense for Reloaded, it just proves to me that these types of things that people want back more than anything else is that woke era, so to speak. Because it was never about celebrating games or making good movies like with Snow White. It's always been about taking the things you know and distorting them to fit a narrative, and I can't stand for that, which makes me not very surprised at the reception to Reloaded and games like it all.
Yeah, is just wrong. And these, I mean, some people who are behind these little articles, I mean, them themselves, but just the people they work for, deep down they know this is a bunch of bull. But they can't really, like, you know, say what they will or ask certain questions that would make sense, to call them out, these people out on their bull crap, because they don't want to look to be seen like racist or bigoted or whatever. And God help us if we get boycotted for it or something like that. They running scared. They know deep down this is kind of crap, but they can't really say their piece under threat of looking some type of way. And they gotta stop being afraid of being called an Istorophobe because you dare call them out on the woke crap. It's just so inauthentic to the goal of quote unquote progressiveness. It's fake progressiveness, in my opinion. You're not doing this for some kind of true equality. You're doing this some kind of agenda. You're manipulating the entire industry to fit a narrative that you want, because or at least the kind of games you think we should like on the basis of how you view the world, and you're trying to put it to our kids. And it's like, okay, it had to stop. And if it took Trump to do so, hey, so be it. Because left unchecked, this crap would have been everywhere
already, and they can keep trying to change my mind with stuff like this. All it's ever going to do is make me reject it even more in the future. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and please don't get demoralized by things like that.
All right. That is my take. This is like so ridiculous, so ridiculous. But anyway, I'm curious to know what you guys think about all this, because this Reloaded game is being like, obliterated. Its reputation is being like annihilated throughout social media. Like probably just about as much as Blizzard right now, with that voice actress try to bully them into uglifying her character on the Overwatch game. You gotta fire these activist people. Stop hiring activists. They don't belong in these spaces. Not video games, not TV. Well, I would say not TV and movies, but depending on if you're some kind of documentarian or something like that, maybe, or doing some kind of indie project, maybe. But for the most part, these kind of people need to stay out of certain writers' rooms, because they have no business. That's just my opinion. But anyway, I will see you guys in a little bit later. I want to hop back into playing some more Digimon, because it's been a few days since I last played. But not even just a few days. It's been like at least a handful of days by this point. But I'll get right into it. But I will see you guys soon. I'll get more reaction videos out in the next few days. So anyway, I'll see y'all soon. Take care.